So we've covered families that are large globally. These are families that are also large globally, but I've grouped these together. These are ones that are large in Wisconsin. So we're going to start learning some families that are ones you're pretty reliably going to run into at some point. So if you're just looking for the most general exposure to plants in Wisconsin, these will be some plants you probably want to know how to watch out for. Nice starting image here for one in the lily family with the little ant crawling into the flower there. So just a little catch up here as we've been going through a few of these different families. I thought it was kind of interesting to put a little pop culture connection on here. So these are some families that we've covered already, and they are some of the more prominent emoji that you can use when you're texting. So if you need to text somebody that you've identified a plant family, you might use some of these. And I've grouped them together. If you wanted to quiz yourself on these, you could stop the video and see if there are distinctive features about these that help you to identify them. And here we go. All right, so Ericaceae, the palm family, so palm trees and also coconuts are in the palm family. The Bromeliad family has pineapples. Vitaceae is the family that we have grapes from. Sweet potatoes, not yams in the sense that I'm using the word, but sometimes colloquially called yams. Convolvulaceae, sweet potatoes. The grass family, lots of members of this family that we eat. I believe this is trying to be rice here on top maybe. And then corn, obviously, members of the grass family. Malvaceae, 5-petaled flowers. And then this interesting feature where the stamens are fused in a column around the style. So that kind of feature here is what's being highlighted on this hibiscus flower family, Malvaceae. Cactaceae, this is a true cactus. I say probably we're trying to evoke something like a saguaro cactus. Otherwise looks pretty much like cactus family, maybe a little bit less like Euphorbiaceae family, but I think we could probably reliably say that's a cactus. Legume family, Fabaceae, including the ground nuts or peanuts. And then I guess our biggest group of emoji for now are the ones in the melon or cucurbit family, Cucurbitaceae, cucumbers, watermelon, melon, as well as zucchini and lots of others in that group. So now you can text your friends about plant families. So getting into these large families in Wisconsin, the first one we're going to talk about is kind of tricky. So I'm kind of on board with what the Wisconsin Flora book does for this family. This is not a proper family anymore. Sorry, I should say that differently. The species that were all grouped into this family, Liliaceae, the lily family, they're not all still in family Liliaceae. So here it is over here on the phylogeny Liliaceae in this position. And I've highlighted some that we're going to talk about. And plants that sometimes you'll see classified in Liliaceae are actually phylogenetically placed in quite a wide variety of these different families that are all in this really big, this whole group here that I'm highlighting. This is the monocots. So Liliaceae is kind of a catch-all for the showy flowered monocots that you can't maybe otherwise place in a good monocot family. So we've seen something like Alismataceae or Hydrocaritaceae. These are families that have monocot type of flowers, but they're wetland or aquatic plants. They're a little easier to place in those families. Sometimes the morphology is tricky for just looking at these plants, especially at the introductory level, and being able to put them in a family. So we're not going to split hairs on these different families, but I will introduce them to you and we'll kind of talk about them. I've got Liliaceae here in quotes. We'll talk about them as this kind of umbrella concept of the old Liliaceae. If you're using your Wisconsin Flora book to identify plants, they are still all lumped in this Liliaceae. The author acknowledges the same problem that I'm talking about here, where they're not monophyletic. But if you're trying to identify them, they do kind of fit pretty well together, and it's a little harder to split them apart into their component families. So Let's zoom in a little bit here. We can go over some of the members of these Liliaceae in the broad sense. So some of these you'll notice they're not even in the same order. So we have order Liliales is an order category. Asparagales is an order category. Dioscoriales, Elismatales, and so on. So I'll just highlight some of these and kind of give you a sense for how they might not be the easiest to tell apart. So we have these characteristic monocot flowers. So 6 tepals, so showy perianth of pretty well uniform organs in the tepal, the undifferentiated perianth layer. So not really sepals and petals different from each other, but just tepals. And 6 of them tells you we've got monocots, lots of parallel leaf venation. 6 stamens is very common. You'll see fused gynoecium. So they're in different groups, but they don't really look it. So I've got some members from Asparagaceae, Amaryllidaceae, Hypoxidaceae, all looking pretty similar here. Same thing if we go into Liliales. The previous slide was the Asparagales, now into Liliales. Pretty similar here. Uvularia, Trillium. In this case, we've got 3 petals and 3 sepals actually are differentiated. The genus Lilium, we have members of these in this genus in Wisconsin. And of course, by our rules of nomenclature, Lilium has to belong to Liliaceae. So if anything definitely belongs to Liliaceae, it's going to be this genus Lilium, and I'll highlight a couple others. One that we saw before in the vines category was this genus Smilax, the greenbrier, and that's got its own family, Smilacaceae. I'd say that's differentiated in a lot of places, including your Wisconsin Flora book. So just sort of showy petaled monocots. Smilax doesn't quite fit into that. They've got rather reduced flowers, but these other ones pretty showy. And continuing on, also Dioscorea, this one we covered in the vines as well. The yam family proper, also not very showy flowers, but maybe over here, this other family, Nartheciaceae, is kind of a showy small flower. And then way out in Elismatales, another family, Tophieldiaceae. This is a rather distant relative to lots of monocots. Also still looking pretty monocot, generic monocot-like. All right, so it's a hard one for me to just give you this family and say, learn this family, but we will do very specifically the Liliaceae family, technically speaking, as it is monophyletic, as we understand it these days. So genus Lilium, of course, and then a couple others here, Erythronium and Clintonia. So showy, undifferentiated perianth. So perianth of 6 parts, sometimes differentiated. I can't recall coming to mind which ones members of this family are differentiated perianth. 6 stamens, 3 fused carpels in a superior ovary. And basically, I won't ask you to know those other families or to tell them apart from Liliaceae, but good to know this concept anyway. So moving on. Of course, we've got a member of the Liliaceae. The tulip is another one of our emoji there.